Hello, YouTube. So, um, Wednesday night, March 25th. Well, here we go. So, I came across this video today and wrote a small paragraph about it and wanted this to be my first React video. This is an interview that Hamza Sadah gave about 8 months ago, and go over to his YouTube channel and give him a like and subscribe. I think that he's doing really good work, and also a kind of play as well, but not cynical play, just simply being a good person and looking to inform people and also interact with their various deflections and excuses and blank spots and pauses and wraparounds and backpedaling and so on and so forth. For me, this channel is something I want to offer out there into the streaming community and the like political analysis and also political forensics, as far as hearing something and then understanding that that something has been through multiple filters, not only from the journalists that originally captured the information, but then the editors that they present it to, and how it gets sort of framed. Let's say things that are left out, things that are added, words that are tweaked, phrases, how it's presented to the public at large. And what I have found is that the best journalism comes from one person, not someone being quoted as being a good journalist and having said something, but the journalists themselves. And if they're no longer around, to find their original records and notes, things like this. And and so this interview is quite interesting. This is going to be my first, again, my first React video, so bear with me. I'm going to be toggling back and forth, pausing the video, talking about it, and I want to, again, with this channel, explore something that I find missing across the board, and that is the psychological side of things, the mind, the structure of the mind behind the image, behind the reactions, psychology, in short. I have some background in Jungian psychology in the sense of understanding archetypes, shadow play, shadow entanglement, projections, transference, which are somewhat the same. Jung was quite incredible human being, and the Jungian psychologist that came during his tenure on the planet and after added a lot to his work. He began a lot that he did not finish. And so sometimes I'm going to refer to various phrases and things, and if you're not familiar with them, it's good to look them up and get a sense of what I'm referring to, because it's universal. The mind is not a cultural artifact or a religious artifact. The mind is objective and universal, and um, it's much more, let's say, neutral in a sense that you cannot say that you have an American mind versus uh, a Ukrainian mind. Um, you can have ideological programs running in your mind from various cultural avenues and belief systems and things like this, but the mind unto itself cannot be owned by a particular group or religion or ideology, because, as you know, people can be deprogrammed, reprogrammed, can change their minds, can have nervous breakdowns, dark night of the soul, and have a lot of things just simply wiped from their hard drive, so to speak, based on some external stress that has triggered internal rearrangements of things. So it's a very malleable uh, phenomenon. And there's a lot of reactionary things going on in the world. And a lot of what you get through these react videos are people who are dismissive of, let's say, the Stan or the Karen, or they say, oh, that's based. And there's a lot of dismissal going on, a lot of tit for tat, and very little pausing and understanding that you're dealing with a work in progress, that no one is completely finished, um, that they're just presenting a maquette, a portion of the self that is available in the moment, and this self is going to change. And yet the assumption when people react is that, well, this person's this or that, and then they dismiss them as if that's all they are and that's all they ever will be. And what I intend to do and support is understanding that people are on a timeline, minute by minute, day by day, moment forward, moment backwards, sometimes moment standing still, just to give people basically the benefit of the doubt that, yes, they can be judged for an action. I think that's legitimate, but not dismissed, not you know like exiled, because that basically creates an us and them, a me and an it. It's just the same old ideology of the other, the enemy, and ultimately what we have is thousands of years of manslaughter, homicide, genocide, assassinations, largely due to the fact that sides are presented as uh, the result of no thinking whatsoever, just simply fear, judgment, um, angst, a need for an enemy, and yet there's no understanding. There's no empathy. There's no compassion. There's no patience. basically. So I'm going to get into this video and show you what happens when a Palestinian from the West Bank meets an Israeli in Israel, and how he basically tries to keep her standing still, although his questions are sort of loosening up a foundation that I think that is pretty, as most foundations are in a cult ideology. The foundations are only firm within that cult system itself because everyone's pretty much running on the same program, and people subconsciously know what to expect and boundaries, and they don't question each other. There's a understanding of where to go and where not to go in order just to keep the illusion of uh, a kind of a cohesive agreement that I am what you are, a sense of sort of like a herd mentality in a sense. So here we go. We have I think he's surfing maybe on Twitch or maybe on YouTube, and it says here OME TV. Um, that may be a platform that he's on, and he's coming across people and seeing if they're willing to speak with him and have a little conversation. Okay, so I may have to do this video all over again because there's commercials, and we don't really care about Dove Men Care bourbon vanilla, um, or I'm going to have to subscribe to YouTube, and so there's no commercials. Holy moly! Well, there it is, folks. So thanks to Dove Men Care bourbon vanilla, this video is going to be paused and to be continued. Mm, I've said a bunch of stuff, and I don't want to edit it. I want to put it out there, and so um, hmm, what to do, and also the bit rate is strange. Let's see. Not really sure. Oh boy, that's different. So, okay, I'll see if I can edit that out. Um, so notice how um, when he inquires of her and he gives her certain answers, she tends to revert back to him, saying, "Oh, is that all you do?" Sort of a dismissive, like there's a definitely a boundary line that he's pushing against, and um, she's reverting back to sort of soft judgments of, doesn't he have anything else better to do? And yet here she is also doing the same thing, basically, um, not out and about. She's also in her room speaking with him, which makes her on the same level as far as, you know, what else are you doing? Well, the same as you're doing, you're speaking with me, I'm speaking with you. So there's, that's kind of ironic. So here's another thing. Um, well, let's go back to the blockade. The blockade's been going on for a long time. There was a point where there was no wall around Gaza, and at some point, settlers, Zionist settler terrorists, tried to start what they have been doing in the West Bank. Um, they started to have like a little township in Gaza, and that wasn't working out too well. And so the Israeli government forced those Israeli settlers, to move out of Gaza. And there was, uh, it was just the population there. You have to understand that Gaza is considered to be the world's largest open air prison. And uh, it, it doesn't have to be a prison via the wall. Of course, that definitely uh, helps consider it such. But it was also a prison before the wall. The wall, the physical wall, is one thing. Um, it goes very deep down into the ground. It has sensors. It has robotical machine guns patrolling the edges of it. Hundreds and hundreds of cameras, and then there's drones that are coming in and out on a regular basis, highly monitored, checkpoints, um, uh, a very abysmal system of oppression. And Israel also bombed the airport that Gaza at some point had. So that's not functioning anymore. And they have military patrol boats out in the ocean to make sure that there's like a limited amount of traffic and distance and things that are allowed. And there's also natural gas deposits off the coast of Gaza that Israel and the G7 are interested in. And Gaza has been a refugee camp for a long time, especially for the ongoing colonizing and capture of land in the West Bank. So what you have is the Palestinian Authority is cucked to the IDF. They're not a legitimate um, Palestinian liberation organization. Um, Not to be, of course, confused with the PLO, which is a completely different situation. I'm just using that phrase as like a civil service. Um, they have helped the IDF capture Palestinians and spy on Palestinians. They're basically an IDF proxy in many ways, like a duplicitous situation going on there. Whereas Hamas, which is based in Gaza, they have never been based in the West Bank. The West Bank really doesn't have a resistance front because it's too fractured. It's not a cohesive land body. Let's say it's small Palestinian settlements and neighborhoods that are surrounded by illegal settler terrorists, and there's a, a beautiful modern highway for Israelis, and then there are kind of war torn dirt roads for Palestinians as far as travel goes. So what might take you 15 or 20 minutes by car could take a Palestinian 4 or 5 hours. So it's segregated, a lot of violence. It's rural and apartments, and so there's various segments of it that are like suburbia and then rural areas. Um, and so Gaza has been a place where Palestinian families from the West Bank are exiled to Gaza, and and Hamas is more popular in the West Bank than in Gaza because of the need for resistance in the West Bank and Gaza. And in Gaza, Hamas is that, let's say, it's real resistance for Gaza and symbolic resistance in a sense for the West Bank, because of course the West Bank's totally on the other side of Israel, and so there's no real physical effect. Like Hamas can't come out and protect West Bank farmers from their olive groves being torched, but morally, symbolically, uh, Hamas is very popular in the West Bank. And another point about Gaza, their water, electricity, nutrition, what kinds of goods and services come in and out are all monitored by Israeli officials. It is not an autonomous city. It is, by all respects, a, a a kind of ghetto of sorts, um, and yeah. So that's a little bit of background there. So here we go. So here, so here's another. Again, do you condemn Hamas? Um, Building an argument that is ultimately you cannot argue against. Like, she's trying to win while knowing and maybe not knowing that she's losing. So she builds a kind of a straw man, asking him the obvious that she knows he's not doing. So this reinforces her um, sense of being right by creating something that cannot be wrong because it's an impossibility to. It's sort of like, well, why aren't you wearing blue glasses? Where are your blue glasses? Well, it's indisputable that he does not have blue glasses on. So she creates a victory that, but the victory is only in her mind. So this is a kind of a deflection mechanism. Okay, so there's no another country for the Jewish. So just in case people don't know, um, Israel is completely a bogus project as far as Orthodox Judaism goes. What Israel, the way Israel was established, goes against, it's completely counterintuitive to the scripture of the Torah. Um, there's no mention of their right to voluntarily create a home. This home or state is supposed to come about only through divine intervention in the present day era, like a kind of a revelation day, um, an assigned place. It's not an assigned place by their deity. And this has not occurred. It's not like in 1948, a deity appeared from the sky and said, okay, you have my blessing and my permission to invade Palestine, dislocate 600 to 700,000 people, bomb, maim, kill, kidnap, pillage, steal. Um, that did not occur. The sequence of events in Orthodox Judaism is very clear in the scripture. And how Israel came about, again, is completely counterintuitive to their actual, quote, promise or future acquisition, ways and means. And so uh, there's no country for the indigenous of Turtle Island here in America. America was once Turtle Island. All of the quote American Indians, which is a sort of a way of further demoralizing the indigenous by calling them American Indians. They're not American Indians. They're Indians, and they're not just Indians, but there's different tribes: Cherokee, Apache, Navajo. The list goes on and on. And so they have what's called nations, but this is just symbolic. It's not. It's something, but it's nowhere near what it was. It's tokenism, let's say, and they also have a right to a country, no? So what does that mean? Does that mean that China has the right to invade um, America, bomb, level cities, give nuclear arms to the indigenous because they have the right to reclaim the United States? Um, it's not to say that Palestinians came about Palestine in that way, you know, like there's no comparison there, but I think you get what I'm saying is that um, a people's right to a country does not supersede and overrule the prerequisite of a genocide. I mean, that is keeping a genocide from occurring ever is more important than the idea of, well, we have a right to this land. And to me, um, that's you know, hypocrisy to the nth degree, um, and mental illness and psychopathy and complete high functioning, a kind of high functioning insanity in a way where um, your sense of self collectively is worth the deaths of others. Um, that is definitely a kind of insanity, a kind of possession, even. Um, so things are heating up. Okay, so I'm afraid to go out. She's quite young. She's probably in her early 20s, so she hasn't probably traveled much and hasn't really developed a sense of survival elsewhere. Like she's in a bubble, and that's where she feels that's the only place that she can exist. But Jews live throughout the entire planet, and they have so for millennia. Um, so this whole idea of a nation state for Jewish people, um, it's not based on the actual genetic history like some of the other older countries. Not that the Jewish, that particular tribe in the Middle East doesn't have ancient roots, it does. But not everyone who is in Israel are of that Abrahamic genome. Uh, you know, the large majority of Israel was settled by Ashkenazi Jews from Europe, and when they came to the region, the first somewhat forced imports of Iraqi Jews were sprayed with DDT. Um, a very humiliating process. DDT helps prevent this bacteria that this little fly spreads around via human. And but the treatment is to spray the environment, not people, not human epidermis that absorbs DDT. And so, and then there's also another situation where Ethiopian Jews were being given sterilization shots unbeknown to them when they were coming into the country to cull their reproducing. So just understand that, just like in America, um, or pretty much any country, let me look at India with their caste system, which is like 4,000 years old. If you have a certain last name, you'll never get past a certain level in society. The caste system is um, racist within the ethnicity of the country. I mean, there's racism, obvious racism, like run of the mill racism, white, black. Um, what's another one? Maybe the Irish and the English. Um, there's there's clear genome differences where the ego can claim I'm Irish or I'm Scottish, and then someone else can say, well, I'm British, and then they take that genome history and identity and they judge one another. Forget being human. It's the ego that is structuring itself around a clearly defined genetic, cultural marker, let's say. And then within that same genome class, like all Indians are ultimately Indian. I'm speaking about India, not Turtle Island. Um, there's a common genetic trait amongst all Indians. But then within that genome, there's racism, there's ethnic uh, caste systems that have been set up. Classism, let's say, basically, classism is a form of racism. And so in Israel, the Ashkenazi Jews are the, let's say, founding fathers and founding matriarchs as well. European, when they settled Israel, they started to wipe out the ancient olive groves and plant European pines, and that's still the olive grove raising destruction is still ongoing today. It's interesting, this attachment to geography. I again, it goes back to the mind. The fact is that we all are attached to a planet. You know, no one's arguing that, well, go back to Jupiter or Neptune or Pluto or Mars or Venus. Um, but the ego cannot operate on that level. It simply can't, because it's so neutral. It's so scarce of there's nowhere for the ego to go. I mean, until we get interplanetary travel, the ego cannot go outside the Earth's atmosphere for the most part. There are some people who believe themselves to be interdimensional beings and so on and so forth, but that's not the status quo. Ultimately, what you have here is an ego identity wrapped up in a geographical location that has some history, some holy sites, and is connected to some bit of propaganda in a book somewhere. But fundamentally, is it really worth it? Is fulfilling a propaganda or a promise or a dictum or ways and means that come through these interpretations of holy books, is it really worth a genocide of tens of thousands of children, mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, cousins, nieces, nephews, grandmothers, grandfathers, hospitals, hundreds of journalists, more than have been killed in Vietnam, World War One, World War Two, Civil War combined? What are we talking about here? Um, where do you draw the line? Well, you can't, because when the ego is uh, attached to something, it will self-destruct in order to go out attached to that something. That's how strong the ego is. Uh, it defends the externals because the internal is completely disconnected. There are no morals, there's no ethics, there's no principles, there's no compassion, there's no empathy. There's something that's disconnected. There's a compromise that has occurred, and it's a condition. It's like a mental illness in a sense. That's not to excuse an adult, because I do believe that people have choices, and they often see an opportunity and then choose not to go down a better route. They're feeling sort of, in their gut. And so the hero's journey keeps going. Again, some mistakes are more expensive than others. I find this a very interesting sort of regulated confrontation. Sorry, guys. So she gets it now. He's just told her that he's from the West Bank and Ramallah, and he cannot go back because of all the assassinations and settler violence in the West Bank and Gaza and Israel in general. Um, so this reminds me a lot of a 3 or 4 hour conversation I recently had with IDF, former IDF soldier, who was in the United States very similar energy, very similar, scattered, quick talking, jumping around, very shallow, intellectual reinforcements, just a lot of anxiety, panic, um, need, a lot of need. There's a sense of um, that being Jewish or being Israeli is it's like it's a necessity. It's a very um, it, it prevails over humanity ultimately. It the human being is buried under how important it is to be uh, when you're a nationalist, when you're so attached to your cultural identity, um, the human is buried. It compromises everything across the board because the other is your stepping stone, is your foothold. Without the other, your identity starts to loosen up, and without an enemy, your savior, whether it's a deity or a country or an ideology, starts to fracture. So the mind has to create, even if it's imaginary, and 9.9 times out of 10, it is imaginary. Very few people actually meet their enemy. And when they do, they oftentimes become friends. Maybe not on the world stage, but in private, because often there's a lot of duplicity in what you show the general public versus what you know to be true privately. Now, again, here we go. It's not about you. Well, she's not in prison. She's not in a tunnel in Gaza somewhere saying this. She is seemingly safe, so to speak. I mean, a lot less safe in Israel, by the way, than if she was in America. So, um, that's an irony that I'm sure she knows, but probably believes that it won't be forever, um, although it has been ever since Israel was established. Uh, it is about him. He's from Ramallah. He undoubtedly has family still in the West Bank, or at least the Middle East. And he is, in all intents and purposes, we could even say genetically, legitimately connected to the land and the people. Where is she from? We don't know. Um, she could be Ukrainian Jew. She could be from upstate New York, um, and her ancestry could be from Spain, for instance. Netanyahu, part of his ancestry is from Spain. Um, None of Netanyahu's ancestors are from the Middle East. They're all European roots. And of course, symbolically, you can say, okay, well, I'm Jewish, and therefore I have a spiritual genome directly in line with Abraham. Well, that's fairy tale talk. When it comes to, like, that's the last straw. That if you're going to really argue, that's the indisputable statement that you'll never lose by creating a fantastical claim that, well, okay, you have a spirit genome, and you're connected that way to Abraham. Well, okay, um, if that's the lowest bar that you can throw out there, then congratulations, because that's um, completely desperate, right? I mean, you get into like a almost like a science fiction paranormal um, Area 51 kind of talk. Not to say that in relation to certain things that talk is relative, but not human beings. It's and especially since it's a deflection, it's not a legitimate avenue of claim that is happening throughout the world. People are not going around claiming land in general because they have a spiritual genome connection to the former inhabitants of that land. This is very specific to Israel. Um, yeah. So, what do you think about that? Well, I think that the October 7th was undoubtedly blowback from decades of torturous treatment and assassinations of innocent family members, daughters, sons, wives, husbands. The list goes on and on. And I've already covered this in another talk where there's a point of abuse where the mind simply flatlines, and retribution and vengeance is all a human being has left to make one last dignified action in their life, whatever that means. Is it justified? That's not my business. It's the business of the family and families involved. It's the business of the country involved and the checks and balances. Um, do we condone it? That's the wrong question to ask, because it's kind of like a gotcha moment where as soon as you say something in the affirmative, you're judged and dismissed, and you're anti-Semitic, you're genocidal, you're maybe even under arrest in certain parts of the United States. Um, it's the wrong question. Do you understand it? Yes, I do. I do understand it. But understanding is not being in that state of affairs, being in that desperation, in that um, place where you know that you're the totality of decades of abuse, sorrow, having your dignity completely stripped away again and again, having your kids murdered, your wife, perhaps your brother, your sister, mother, father. At any time, at any place in Gaza, your family members can simply be wiped off the face of the earth for no good reason other than that they were in a building where an AI program has found a person who knew a person who knew a person's uncles, aunts, nephews, cousin, who knew uh, a, a second cousin of a Hamas member. And then the building is bombed. Um, or you're sniped by an Israeli settler in the West Bank just for the fun of it. It happens a lot. So this, it's like a slow drip journey to insanity, but not the kind of insanity that has will and has the backing of the largest military industrial complex on the planet. This is imprisoned insanity. This is tortured insanity. This is hyper fixated, hyper paranoid insanity, because you know that at any moment, anyone you care about could die, or you could die. Nothing is anchored, nothing is for sure, nothing is guaranteed. And humiliation is a constant nutrient poison that is being fed to you every day by an oppressed situation, by the oppressors themselves. So there's a certain place where the human simply lashes out, one last stand, because life it just cannot simply keep going on. It's reached its limit. There's a lot to say around this. And, only the living judge the dead because they have an advantage that the dead cannot speak. at least in ordinary day-to-day routine. The dead cannot speak. This is, to me, this is a high crime. We give a broad brushstroke as if we know, uh, and we don't. Again, it's the business of the families involved and the the region, the country, the tribes. But I understand. So here she, rather than own what he's talking about, her own little piece of it, she defers and deflects to the government. I'm not the government. Well, she is the government. She's a citizen of the government, and she can, it's perhaps at some point in time in her life, own her little piece of that. Um, and so, again, denial, deflection, defer. I'm not the government. Well, you are. You support your government. You choose not to critically think about your government versus going about your daily life with what they're doing without questioning it. There is participation. Um, Maybe she's speaking, way literally, but I don't think that's why she's saying what she's saying. And yes, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of uh, Palestinians in detention, they call it, which is prison. Detention is a word that the West uses to uh, cushion the the news, how it sounds or feels to the viewer, as if you're in high school and you're in detention for an hour. We're talking about hardcore prison in not a semi-pleasant, well-lit room where you're waiting for an hour until you're released. Um, Detention in Israel is supermax prison in the United States, and you're not in detention if you're in a supermax prison. So it's interesting that he says he's dead serious. So, you know, think about that a little bit. How is that a living human being can say that? Or was it a Freudian slip? Um, Maybe he is dead and serious. So let's slow it down a little bit and just consider something. And I'm going to infer something. I'm not going to come straight out and say it because I want it to kind of sink in on sort of a subliminal level. I'm dead. Serious. So feel that out for yourself. Things that people say from time to time hint at certain things. And then all you can do is just watch, especially if you live in the United States like myself and you can't really, well, even if I was in Israel, um, there's not much I would be able to do. I would most likely be in detention. So yeah, uh, it's intense. It's really intense. So not to rehash something that a lot of people already know, but just a little footnote. There were absolutely no beheaded babies. Uh, One child was killed in either a tank round from the IDF, possibly heavy artillery from Hamas, or one of the domestic accompaniments from the prison break. Um, there were no children in ovens. There were no mass slaughter of children or beheadings. All of that was complete propaganda. Um, the guy that originally told that story was interviewed, and it's on YouTube, and he admits that he did not know. He jumped ahead and said some things, and um, I can't quote his exact words, but the implication is there that uh, it was all absolute propaganda. Um, and that goes for some other things that were spread around in the first 4 to 6 weeks around trying to justify genocide. Um, 9.5 times out of 10, it was simply hyperbole, just um, the usual IDF propaganda to trigger people into reactionary uh, thinking and being, and to justify a response, which there is no justification for genocide, even if those things were true. Put yourself in the shoes of the Palestinians. if there was a group of, let's say, there was a cult in your neighborhood and they suddenly decided to mass slaughter a bunch of people in a neighboring state. They go over the state line and they mass slaughter 1,000 people. And then they come back over the state line and they disperse. And no one really knows where they are. They just know that they know the cult. They know the sort of the approximation of where they're at, right? So let's say 1,000 people. And then suddenly that state declares war on the entire state and mass slaughters, let's say, 1,000,000 people. Now, how is that math going to work out in the future? You have 999,000 vengeful relatives to the 1,000. The 1,000,000 for 1,000. And I'm not saying that 1,000 for 1,000 is uh, on the grand scheme of things the way to go about reconciling the the effects, because often just more effects of the same thing doesn't really approach the cause. It just prolongs it, just kicks the can down the street, and it's just a unending reciprocated tit for tat all the way through until the human species evolves itself uh, back into the void, and with having been no better for it as far as getting to the cause of problems. It's just a series of effects, one effect for another effect for another effect, eye for an eye. Um, eye for an eye is not an intellectual, philosophical position. It's a reactionary thing that satisfies you in the moment, but ultimately it answers no questions. So here we are. We're her last phrase. We're not getting anywhere. So it's interesting. It's an exclamation, but also possibly a prediction that Israel is ultimately destined to fail. We're not getting anywhere, meaning it's going to be really tough to create a second ethno-state somewhere else on the planet after this one fails, and it will fail. It is. There's no way that after October 7th, the world at large now they they have seen the the dungeon prisoner hidden away under the billionaire's living room while he's having soirees and his golf buddies over. Unbeknown to everyone else, the prisoner escapes up the stairs and out of the door and into uh, the party, and everyone's dressed in three-piece suits and uh, 10 grand gala dresses, and here comes a torturous soul from the basement, and disheveled, rambling, blind because it's been in the dark for years, pale, emaciated, uh, reeking with what happens to a human being when they're not cared for. Sores, wild eyes, maybe blind even. And it has a monogram collar with the owner's initials on its neck with a chain dangling on the floor. So there's no doubt who and what this is. It's a prisoner that has escaped, and you can't go back to that. You can't rewind that or backpedal. There's absolutely no way that Israel is going to be able to reestablish itself with the level of clandestine um, anonymousness that it has had for decades and decades due to $1 billion propaganda machine that has been keeping things under wrap for a very long time. Uh, yeah, so great effort on Hamza's part here, though. So it's interesting if you remember what this other half of the screen looked like. It looked like a close up of Ash, which is kind of a curious situation. Um, so yeah, that's it for this interview. And, something that something I wrote today. I'm going to end with this. American Palestinian meets the girl in a bubble. Notice how her dehumanization ideology is on autopilot, manufacturing straw men 24/7, or in this case, before, during, and with each afterthought. There's no pause allowed to self reflect on the fact that her Israel is literally built on fresh human bones daily, all the way back to 1948. Nor is there a realization that she is modeling the very sociopathy that he speaks of trying to help individuals with. The emotional panic takes the driver's seat. This is ancestral. This is the unresolved trauma she's inherited. As the slave inherits its master's children's ownership of him or her. The self is locked away. She is reiterating a mass-cultural ideological script instead. There is no autonomy of I am to speak of or from. One of the loneliest forms of existence is transient belonging to a culture, religion, or team, while oneself has never once entered its own home. And in all fairness, I would say that's often the case for most people in their early 20s are strangers to their home. But when you're in a cult, when you're in an extremist organization or culture, let's say, it's even harder to understand who you are outside of the ego, outside of what the world needs you to be, so it can feel more comfortable with itself as a unit, not as an individual. But it's much easier to belong to a unit than to be an individual that threatens the unit, even just by being an individual. It's not something that's not like you need to be conscientiously threatening to the group or society at large. It's simply that you are, because you're different. You see through what they have oftentimes given away or compromised in order to stay agreeable or pliable or pleasant or acceptable. And, it's a jungle, and it's also a pond and a stream and a river and an ocean. Um, and in Israel's case, it's a prehistoric tar pit with, as all what befalls all fascist regimes, it will eventually step in its own mess because it will run out of enemies and it will turn inward in upon itself. Ultimately, fascism is a self-destructive rite of, who knows, maybe it's a rite of passage of sorts. But ultimately, if it is a rite of passage, it's not something that's ever been rewarded here on Earth as a legitimate career path or way of going about becoming a better human being. If anything, it could be a form of sort of like an abstract form of penance of sorts to trade your life for I am dead serious. That's a very, that's a very different way of existing on the planet. And until human beings get a grip and understand that just because a person looks human or presents themselves as such, it means nothing. It's just a huge assumption that all minds are the same. They have the same capacities, the same ability to, you know, birth certain morals and principles and such. Not to contradict what I said previously about the mind being a neutral ground, I still believe that, and I believe that it's uh, a much more important focus on the mind itself versus the contents. But let's just say that mind's mind is mind, but it does have distinct nuances and differences and capabilities based on the neurological framework that it's taking up space. For instance, if you have a damaged frontal lobe, your mind is going to be affected by that. Um, if you have a neurochemical imbalance, your mind is going to be affected by that. So, but the nature of the mind itself, the elemental side of it, is still a universal, neutral phenomenon. And that's the center of attention for myself. That the mind is that's where the cause resides, and that's what I'm interested in exploring. So, good night, and thank you for listening.